Section 5 of Vegetarianism and Occultism. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Vegetarianism and Occultism by C.W. Leadbeater. Section 5. Greater Strength. Fourth, because men are stronger and better on a vegetarian diet. I know that people say, "You will be so weak if you do not eat dead flesh." As a matter of fact, this is untrue. I do not know whether there may be any people who find themselves weaker on a diet of vegetables, but I do know this, that in many athletic contests, recently, the vegetarians have proved themselves the strongest and the most enduring, as for example in the recent cycling races in Germany, where all those who took high places in the race were vegetarian. There have been many such trials, and they show that, other things being equal, the man who takes pure food succeeds better. We have to face facts, and in this case the facts are all ranged on one side, as against foolish prejudices and loathsome lust on the other. The reason was plainly given by Dr. J.D. Craig, who writes, "Vigor of the body is often boasted by flesh-eaters, particularly if they live mostly in the open air, but there is peculiarity about them, and they have not the endurance of vegetarians. The reason of this is that flesh-meat is already on the downward path of retrograde change, and as a consequence its presence in the tissues is of short duration. The impetus given to it in the body of the animal from which it was taken is reinforced by another impulse in the second one, and for these reasons what energy it does contain is soon given out, and there are urgent demands for more to take its place. The flesh-eater, then, may do a large amount of work in a short time if well fed. He soon gets hungry, however, and when so, becomes weak. On the other hand, vegetable products are of slow digestion. They contain all of the original store of energy, and no poisons. Their retrograde change is less rapid than meat, having just commenced, and therefore their force is released more slowly, with less loss, and the person nourished by them can work for a long time without food if necessary, and without discomfort. The people in Europe who abstain from flesh are of the better and more intelligent class, and the subject of endurance has been approached and thoroughly investigated by them. In Germany and England a number of notable athletic contests that required endurance have been made between flesh-eaters and vegetarians, with the result that the vegetarian has invariably come off victorious. We shall find, if we investigate, that this fact has been known for a long time, for even in ancient history we find traces of it. It will be recollected that of all the tribes of Greeks the strongest and the most enduring, by universal admission and reputation, were the Spartans, and the simplicity of their vegetable diet is a matter of common knowledge. Think too of the Greek athletes, those who prepared themselves with such care for participation in the Olympian and Isthmian games. If you will read the classics you will find that these men, who in their own line surpassed all the rest of the world, lived upon figs, nuts, cheese, and maize. Then there were the Roman gladiators, men on whose strength depended their life and fame, and yet we find that their diet consisted exclusively of barley cakes and oil. They knew well that this was the most strengthening food. All these examples show us that the common and persistent fallacy that one must eat flesh in order to be strong has no foundation in fact. Indeed, the exact contrary is true. Charles Darwin remarked in one of his letters, "The most extraordinary workers I ever saw, the laborers in the mines of Chile, live exclusively on vegetable food, including many seeds of leguminous plants." Of the same miners, Sir Francis Head writes, "It is usual for the copper miners of central Chile to carry loads of ore of 200 pounds weight up 80 perpendicular yards 12 times a day, and their diet is entirely vegetarian, a breakfast of figs and small loaves of bread, a dinner of boiled beans, and a supper of roasted wheat. Mr. F.T. Wood, in his Discoveries at Ephesus, writes, "The Turkish porters in Smyrna often carry from 400 to 600 pounds weight on their backs, and the captain one day pointed out to me one of his men who had carried an enormous bale of merchandise, weighing 800 pounds, up an incline into an upper warehouse, so that with this frugal diet their strength was unusually great." Of these same Turks, Sir William Fairbairn has said, "The Turk can live and fight where soldiers of any other nationality would starve. His simple habits, his abstinence from intoxicating liquors, and his normal vegetarian diet, enable him to suffer the greatest hardships and to exist on the scantiest and simplest of foods." I myself can bear witness to the enormous strength displayed by the vegetarian Tamil coolies of the south of India, for I have frequently seen them carry loads which astonished me. I remember in one case standing upon the deck of a steamer and watching one of these coolies take a huge case upon his back and walk slowly but steadily down a plank to the shore with it and deposit it in a shed. The captain standing by me remarked with surprise, "Why, it took 4 English laborers to get that case on board in the docks at London." I have also seen another of these coolies, after having had a great piano put on his back, carry it unaided for a considerable distance. Yet these men are entirely vegetarian, for they live chiefly upon rice and water, with perhaps, occasionally, a little tamarind for flavoring. On the same subject, Dr. Alexander Haig, whom we have already quoted, writes, "The effect of getting free from uric acid has been to make my bodily powers quite as great as they were 15 years ago. I scarcely believe that even 15 years ago I could have undertaken the exercise in which I now indulge with absolute impunity, with freedom from fatigue and distress at the time, and from stiffness next day. Indeed, I often say that it is impossible now to tire me, and relatively I believe this is true." This distinguished physician became a vegetarian because from his study of the diseases caused by the presence of uric acid in the system, he discovered that flesh eating was the chief source of this deadly poison. Another interesting point which he mentions is that his change of diet brought about in him a distinct change of disposition, that whereas he found himself constantly nervous and irritable, he now became much steadier and calmer and less angry. He fully realizes that this is due to the change in his food. If we require any further evidence, we have it close to our hand in the animal kingdom. We shall observe that there the carnivora are not the strongest, but that all the work of the world is done by the herbivora, by horses, mules, oxen, elephants, and camels. We do not find that men can utilize the lion or the tiger, or that the strength of these savage flesh-eaters is at all equal to that of those who assimilate directly from the vegetable kingdom. End of section 5. Recording by Andrea Fiore.